He didn't scheme, he didn't plot, he just removed himself. And the absence of his presence told her more than any argument ever could have. Because here's the brutal truth about relationships. You don't always know what you have until the person who had you stops trying. She's standing in his hallway, sweatpants, red eyes, no filter, realizing that her unbothered energy was apparently very, very bothered. And Marcus is still leaning against that doorframe, waiting, not desperate, not angry, just done performing for an audience of one who kept forgetting to clap.
Let me paint you a picture. You're 28, got a solid career in IT consulting, decent apartment. You remember to water your plant this week. Life's going pretty well. You've got a girlfriend of 2 years. 2 whole years. We're talking inside jokes, family holiday dinners, even casually tossing around the idea of moving in together next spring. Classic wholesome stuff, right? Wrong. Or at least, that's what you're about to find out. Here's where our guy, let's call him Marcus, because that just sounds like a dude who debugs code and makes decent pasta. Here's where Marcus starts noticing something's off. Not immediately, not like a fire alarm, more like that one check engine light you keep ignoring because, hey, the car's still running. Around month 20 of the relationship, his girlfriend Danielle starts going ghost. Not completely. She's not in a bunker somewhere. She's active. Oh, she's very active. Posting Instagram stories of brunches, gym selfies, nights out with the girls, all while Marcus's texts sit there with the most devastating symbol in modern dating, the single gray checkmark. Not even a read receipt, just delivered, hanging there in the void like a bad investment. Now here's the thing about guys like Marcus. He does what a lot of us do. He rationalizes. She's busy. Work gets crazy. She's got her own life. I've got mine. We're independent adults. Valid, healthy even. But there's a difference between giving your partner space and being placed on the back shelf next to the expired protein powder and forgotten gym membership. The pattern kept intensifying. WhatsApp showing her last seen updating every few minutes, but his messages? Crickets. If you've ever watched those timestamps refresh while your message sits unread, you know the specific brand of psychological damage that does to a person. It's its own little torture device disguised as a feature. One Thursday evening, after a brutal day debugging code for a client who probably describes themselves as a visionary, Marcus sends her a simple check-in text. Hey, haven't heard from you since yesterday morning. Everything okay? 3 hours later, she replies. And I want you to really sit with her response for a second. Jesus Christ, do you need a GPS tracker on me now? Bro, he sent one text. One. Not 40, not a carrier pigeon, not a skywriter. One text after a day and a half of radio silence. So Marcus, like any reasonable person who still has a pulse and some self-respect buried under there somewhere, calls her. She picks up on the 5th ring, the ringtone equivalent of an eye roll, and he can hear music, laughter, a whole party vibe in the background. Her voice is flat, annoyed, like he just interrupted something critical, which, based on the Instagram stories, was probably a cocktail she was about to photograph. He tells her she's been distant, that he just wanted to make sure she was all right, and that's when she drops the line that's going to set off the chain reaction of everything that comes next. Stop being so needy. I'll talk to you whenever I feel like it. I don't owe you constant updates. He keeps his voice completely calm, doesn't explode, doesn't beg, just says 2 words. As you wish. She hangs up, doesn't even say goodbye, and Marcus sits there on his couch, phone in hand, staring at 2 years of his life on a screen. Something in him just clicked off. And brother, what happens next? Buckle up.
Okay, so let's talk about what Marcus does after Danielle hangs up on him mid-conversation like he's a telemarketer offering an extended car warranty. He doesn't call back. He doesn't fire off a passive-aggressive paragraph. He doesn't text K, though honestly that would have been valid. He opens up her chat, scrolls through hundreds of messages, inside jokes, future plans, heart emojis from a happier timeline, and does something he's never done before. He mutes the conversation. Notifications off. Then he flips the whole phone face down on the coffee table, walks away, and just lets the silence breathe. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's petty, that's immature, he should have communicated. And look, in a perfect world where people don't mock you for caring about them, sure, communication first. But she already communicated. Loudly, clearly, with that dead-eyed, stop being so needy energy. Sometimes the message is delivered. You just have to decide if you're going to accept the terms. And Marcus decided he wasn't. The first 3 days were rough, though. Let's not sugarcoat it. This man had been texting this woman every single day for almost 2 years. Morning messages, lunch check-ins, goodnight calls. That's not just a habit, that's muscle memory baked into the nervous system. His hand would reach for his phone during his morning coffee like it had its own agenda. He'd see something funny and instinctively think, oh, she'd love this. And then remember. Remember the contempt in her voice, the casual way she dismissed him, like 2 years of someone choosing you every day was somehow an inconvenience. And each time that thought crept in, he'd put the phone back down. Day 4, he started filling the void with actual life. Went to the gym, not the I'm going to post this on my story for clout gym visit. Just showed up, worked out, went home. Called his brother Tyler, who he'd been meaning to catch up with for literal months. They talked for 2 hours about nothing, about everything, the way you talk to someone who actually wants to hear from you. Day 5, he deep cleaned his apartment, tackled the disaster closet that had been a public safety hazard since 2023, fixed the bathroom faucet that had been leaking for weeks, dripping away in the background like a very small, very annoying reminder that he'd been neglecting himself to keep someone else comfortable. And something shifted, something quiet but significant. The anxiety he'd been carrying, that low hum background noise of, when will she text back? Did I say something wrong? Why is she online but not responding to me? Started fading. He wasn't waiting anymore, and it felt weird at first. Then it felt like oxygen. Meanwhile, Danielle posted a mirror selfie, full glam, tight dress, caption, unbothered energy sparkles. Marcus saw it, took one look, closed the app, and didn't check again. Because here's the thing about unbothered energy. Real unbothered people don't announce it, they just live it. That caption was doing a lot of heavy lifting for someone who apparently had zero emotional investment in a relationship. The irony? Marcus was becoming actually unbothered, just quietly, without the Instagram post to prove it. Week 1 was ending. His phone was still silent on her end. That was about to change, but not in the way she planned. Week 2, and Marcus is entering what I can only describe as his main character era, except he's not doing it for the audience. He's doing it because he literally just started living again. Work drops a massive new project on his desk, a complete system overhaul for a financial firm. The kind of project that requires full brain engagement, the kind that keeps you at the office until 8 p.m. most nights, the kind that under normal circumstances would stress him out. But right now, it's a gift. Because when your brain is fully locked in on a problem, it doesn't have the bandwidth to sit around wondering why someone who loves you is too busy to send a 2-second reply. His colleagues start noticing a difference. His coworker Andrea, sharp, no nonsense, the kind of person who's clearly been through some things, catches it over coffee one morning. "You seem different lately," she says, stirring her latte. "Good different, more focused." Marcus keeps it brief. "Just focusing on myself, relationship stuff." She nods and then hits him with something that lands harder than any pep talk you would have asked for. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. You just have to be smart enough not to bring it back in. He laughs in the moment, but those words echo for days, because that's the question he keeps circling without naming it. Was Danielle showing him exactly who she was this whole time? And had he just been too invested, too in love, too accommodating, too busy explaining away red flags to see it clearly? The answer, when you look at it from the outside, is pretty obviously yes. The pattern was there. She'd be warm when she wanted attention, cold when she didn't, available when she was bored, dismissive when she wasn't. Marcus had been on a relationship subscription service where he was paying full price but only getting service when it was convenient for her. And the moment he raised a concern about the quality of service,
He got told he was needy for expecting what he was paying for. That's not a relationship. That's a 1-star Yelp review waiting to happen. By week 3, the shift was complete. Marcus had genuinely stopped thinking about her. Not in a repressed, I'm fine, I'm totally fine, please don't ask way. Actually stopped. She just wasn't occupying real estate in his brain anymore. He picked up reading again, something he'd dropped during the relationship because he'd spend his evenings in that agonizing waiting mode, phone face up, watching for a notification that half the time never came. He finished 2 science fiction novels in 1 week, stayed up until 2 a.m. on a Tuesday because the story was too good to put down. He went to a concert with his college roommate Nathan, tried that Thai restaurant he'd been curious about for months. He was living his life. Not performing it, not documenting it for anyone, just actually living it. And Danielle? Well, Danielle had posted 4 more Instagram stories, written a caption about real ones knowing your worth, done a gym check-in at 7 a.m. By all appearances, thriving. But here's the thing about appearances. Day 23 was coming, and appearances were about to crack wide open.
Day 23. Marcus is in his kitchen cooking pasta carbonara, a dish he'd been trying to nail for weeks when his phone buzzes. The sound is back on now because he'd missed enough actual work calls to justify it. But it's not Danielle. It's his brother, Tyler. Dude, is Danielle okay? She just sent me a weird DM asking if you're all right. Marcus freezes, wooden spoon mid-stir, cream sauce doing its thing on the stove. So she'd gone to his brother. Interesting move. Desperate move, but interesting. He tells Tyler they hadn't officially broken up. He'd just stopped reaching out. Tyler, who had never been Danielle's biggest fan and was not about to start now, had already told her Marcus was fine and that she should ask him directly. Marcus tells Tyler that was perfect. Hangs up. Then he opens the muted conversation. 37 unread messages. Now look, I'm going to walk you through the arc of these messages because it is genuinely one of the most revealing sequences of events in this whole story. It's like watching someone's public relations strategy collapse in real time. Day 10. Hey. Casual. Breezy. Like she'd just been busy and this was totally normal. Day 12. You there? Still keeping it light, but the question mark is doing some work. Day 15. Seriously, what's your problem? Ah. There it is. The mask slips a little. Now it's his fault for not chasing. Classic. This is childish. You're acting like a child. Because clearly the appropriate response to someone who called you needy and told you they'd talk to you when they felt like it is to immediately start talking to them again, on their schedule, as usual. Day 18. I don't understand why you're being like this. The confusion is real here. She genuinely doesn't get it, which tells you everything. Day 20. Why are you ignoring me? Can we please talk? I'm getting worried. Now the tone has completely shifted. We've gone from annoyed to anxious. The ground has moved. Day 22. This isn't funny anymore. Spoiler, nobody was laughing. And then, most recently, sent just 40 minutes before Tyler's text, I'm coming over. We need to talk. This has gone on long enough. Marcus read every single message, then set the phone down. Here's what gets me about this. He described feeling nothing, not satisfaction, not vindication, not even the twinge of, yeah, that's what you get, just a mild, detached curiosity, like watching a show he'd already mentally canceled. That's not a choice he made in the moment. That's actually what happens when the emotional connection finally runs dry. When someone shows you who they are often enough that the hurt just converts to information. You stop being devastated by the storm and start simply noting the weather. He unmuted her number, just in case she called, and went back to his pasta. Added the egg mixture slowly. Watched the sauce come together. 20 minutes later. Boom, boom, boom. Aggressive knocking at his front door. Not a hey, it's me knock. A desperate, thunderous, I have made some choices and I am now standing outside someone's apartment at night in sweatpants knock. His neighbor's dog started barking. Marcus turned off the stove, wiped his hands on a dish towel, and walked slowly to the door. And what he saw through the peephole, not what he expected.
Through the peephole. Danielle. But not the Danielle from the Instagram stories. Not the unbothered energy sparkles girl with the full beat, the tight dress, the cocktail in hand. This was a completely different person standing in his hallway. Messy bun with strands falling everywhere. Gray sweatpants, oversized hoodie, no makeup, eyes red and puffy. She looked like someone who had spent the better part of the day convincing themselves everything was fine, before ultimately deciding it was not fine and driving across town to prove it. Marcus opens the door. "Hey." She stares at him like she's seeing a ghost. Mouth drops open. You're okay?" "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" She struggles, hands gesturing. "You haven't answered me in 3 weeks. 3 weeks! I thought something happened to you. I thought you were dead or hurt or in the hospital." "I'm fine," he says, as calm as still water, leaning against the doorframe. "Just been busy." And then watch how fast this flips. Her face does that thing. Relief, then confusion, then anger, all in about 4 seconds. Because she walked over there ready to be the concerned girlfriend. She had a whole narrative. She was worried. She cared. She was there. But Marcus, standing in his doorway, looking completely fine, cooking dinner, clearly not having experienced any kind of crisis, that narrative just dissolved. "Busy? You couldn't send one text, one message to let me know you were alive?" "You said you'd talk to me whenever you felt like it," he says. No heat in it, just a statement of fact. I respected that. I stopped reaching out. I waited for you to feel like it. "That's not... I didn't mean... I didn't mean it like that." "What didn't you mean?" And now he actually wants to know, genuinely. What exactly were you trying to communicate when you said it, Danielle? Because he heard it with his ears and received it with his entire nervous system. But sure, let's workshop it. "I wasn't trying to push you away completely," she says. "I didn't mean for you to just disappear like you don't exist." "I didn't disappear. I've been right here the whole time. You just didn't notice because I wasn't chasing you anymore." Silence. She opens her mouth, closes it, eyes filling up. "You're punishing me. This is punishment." "I'm not punishing you. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Space to talk to me whenever you felt like it. You just haven't felt like it much." Look, I want to be real for a second. This isn't about Marcus winning. This isn't a power move tutorial or a manipulation playbook. What this actually is a guy who finally stopped performing emotional labor for someone who thought that labor was optional. He didn't scheme, he didn't plot, he just removed himself. And the absence of his presence told her more than any argument ever could have. Because here's the brutal truth about relationships. You don't always know what you have until the person who had you stops trying. She's standing in his hallway, sweatpants, red eyes, no filter, realizing that her unbothered energy was apparently very, very bothered. And Marcus is still leaning against that doorframe, waiting to see what she actually has to say. So Danielle's crying now. Not delicate, cinematic crying. The real kind. The messy, mascara tracking down her face kind that you can't choreograph or make look good for an Instagram story. The kind that only happens when something has genuinely broken through whatever wall you built around yourself. She tries to explain. Work was insane. She felt suffocated. She didn't mean for it to go this far. And Marcus listens. He actually listens. Then he says something that cuts cleaner than any insult could have. "You say that. You say, hey, I need some space for a few days because work is overwhelming and I need to decompress. You don't mock me. You don't make me feel pathetic for caring. You communicate like an adult." She knows he's right. You can see it in how she flinches, not because it's an attack, but because it's accurate. And accurate hurts worse than mean. "I know," she says quietly. "I should have." But then she says something that reveals the real misunderstanding at the center of all of this. "I just didn't think you'd actually go cold like this. This isn't like you." And that one hits different, because she's right. It wasn't like him. He had spent the better part of 2 years being warm, consistent, available, emotionally present. The guy who sent good morning texts, who checked in during lunch breaks, who made sure she was okay. That was his baseline. And somewhere along the way, she started treating his consistency like a given, like the Wi-Fi, something you only notice when it goes out. Marcus says it plainly. Maybe it should have been.
Maybe I should have established boundaries a long time ago instead of accepting whatever scraps of attention you threw my way. The word scraps lands. She repeats it back like she can't believe he said it, like the framing is too harsh. But is it? Think about it. He was available. She was available when convenient. He texted first, every time. He asked how she was doing while she was posting gym selfies. He worried when she went quiet while she was out having the time of her life. He was giving full portions while receiving irregularly, depending on her mood and schedule. Scraps isn't dramatic. Scraps is accurate. I didn't realize. I didn't know it felt like that for you. You didn't ask. 2 words, 4 syllables, absolutely devastating in their simplicity. Because that's the thing, isn't it? She wasn't evil. She wasn't some cartoon villain twirling her mustache and deciding to make Marcus miserable. She just never asked, never paused to check in on the person who was always checking in on her, never noticed the imbalance because the imbalance was working in her favor. She asks if they're over. Her voice is barely above a whisper now. Marcus leans against the doorframe, suddenly just tired. Not angry, not heartbroken, just tired. The kind of tired that settles into your bones when you've been carrying something heavier than you realized for longer than you should have. Are we over? He says. Because from where I'm standing, we've been over for 3 weeks. You just didn't notice. She flinches again. Because that, right there, that's not a comeback. That's just the truth.
Let's take a detour for a second, because we need to talk about that Instagram post. Unbothered energy sparkles. Posted end of week 1, full glam, tight dress, big smile. Comments full of fire emojis and yes queen affirmations from people who had no idea what was actually happening in her life. Marcus saw it, processed it, closed the app, moved on. But during the doorstep confrontation, he brings it up. And this is where things get philosophically interesting. He looks at her, sweatpants, red eyes, a woman who drove across town in a state of panic because she couldn't get a text back, and says, "You know what? You looked happy. You looked relieved to not deal with me, so I let you have that." She immediately says it wasn't about him, and he believes him completely. He's not accusing her of staging the post as a power move. He just points out what he observed and drew logical conclusions from. Here's the uncomfortable reality about social media that nobody wants to admit out loud. Sometimes we post thriving content precisely when we are not thriving. The unbothered caption is frequently written by someone who is very bothered. The solo travel aesthetic often follows a breakup. The gym selfie at 6 a.m. usually appears during some kind of internal chaos. We curate the narrative we want people to see, while the actual experience is happening off-screen. And that's fine. Nobody owes the internet their emotional processing. But when you're in a relationship, and your partner sees your unbothered story while your texts to them sit unread, the message is received, whether you meant to send it or not. Marcus received the message. He just chose to accept it instead of argue with it. Back at the door, he continues, "You're allowed to feel however you want, but I'm also allowed to stop being an option you pick up when you're bored or lonely or need an ego boost." And this is the part I think gets lost in the noise of the "he went silent, she came crawling back" narrative that people turn this kind of story into. Because it's not really about tactics. It's not about making someone chase you by playing hard to get. Marcus wasn't playing. He wasn't following a strategy from a Reddit thread. He was just done operating as someone's emotional vending machine, available 24/7, low maintenance, always restocked, easy to ignore until you need something. He'd spent 2 years being reliably present for someone who treated his presence as optional. And when he removed himself, not as a game, not as a punishment, genuinely just to survive, the void he left was apparently much larger than she'd accounted for. That's not manipulation, that's math. When your consistent presence is taken for granted, its absence is loudest. She's crying fully now, the kind of crying where you stop caring what you look like because it's gone past that point. "I love you," she says. And Marcus doesn't dismiss it. He doesn't call her a liar. He just sits with it for a moment and says quietly, "Maybe you do, but you don't respect me." 6 words. The whole thing, right there. She asks if they can just talk, really talk. She'll do better. She'll communicate more. She'll make him a priority, she promises. And here's where Marcus says something that's honestly more self-aware than most breakup speeches in actual movies. He tells her she'll do those things. He actually believes she would, for a few weeks, maybe a month, until she gets comfortable again, until she knows he's not going anywhere. And then slowly, gradually, the pattern would creep back. The read receipts would start stretching, the check-ins would fade, the stop being needy energy would return dressed up slightly differently. And he'd be right back to wondering why she hadn't texted and feeling guilty for noticing. Because that's how it works when the core dynamic hasn't changed. You can patch the surface all you want, but if the underlying structure is broken, the cracks just come back, usually in the same places. She reaches for his hand. He doesn't pull away, but he doesn't hold it either. Just lets it rest there. Passive. The physical version of, I see you, but I'm not reaching back. She said she's sorry, truly, that she was selfish, that she was taking him for granted, and she knows that now. And Marcus, and this is the part that separates this from a revenge fantasy, Marcus says he's sorry too. Not sarcastically, not as a weapon. Actually sorry. Sorry that it took him this long to respect himself enough to walk away. Sorry that he'd spent months accepting behavior that made him feel small because he loved someone and didn't want to lose them. Sorry that the relationship had quietly decayed while he kept trying to maintain it alone. That's the real loss here, not just the relationship. The time spent shrinking himself to fit into a space that was getting smaller and smaller. I deserve better than someone who makes me feel bad for caring. He says it plainly, not like a mic drop, just like a fact he's finally gotten comfortable stating out loud. He gently pulls his hand back, steps away from the door. Take care of yourself, Danielle. I mean that. Wait, please. He closes the door, softly, firmly. No slam, no drama, no final devastating line. Just the quiet click of a decision made. He hears her on the other side of the door, crying, standing there for a long moment, then shuffling footsteps. The sound of her walking away down the hallway, fading, gone. Marcus walks back to his kitchen. The pasta water has gone cold. He dumps it out without ceremony, fills the pot fresh, turns the burner back on, puts on some music while he waits. And that's it. That's the end of them. No shouting match, no dramatic speech that goes viral in a group chat, no satisfying moment of gotcha. Just a man who stopped waiting for someone to treat him like he mattered, said goodbye with full dignity, and went back to cooking dinner. Because here's what people miss when they watch stories like this. The most powerful thing Marcus did wasn't going silent. It was deciding his own peace was worth protecting. Everything else followed from that. But the story doesn't end there. 2 months later, things get even more interesting.
2 months later. Tyler tells Marcus that Danielle started dating someone new, a guy from her gym, about a month after their last conversation. Marcus's reaction? Nothing. Not jealousy, not vindication, not even a flicker of curiosity about who the guy is or whether he's better looking or what his whole deal is. Just nothing. The emotional equivalent of seeing a notification and deciding it doesn't require your attention. And that nothing? That's actually huge. Because think about where he was 90 days before this. Anxiously watching WhatsApp timestamps, heart dropping every time a message stayed on one gray checkmark. Calling her to make sure she was okay, and getting, Jesus Christ, do you need a GPS tracker on me in return? That was a man operating from a place of constant low-grade fear. Fear of losing something that, as it turned out, wasn't treating him particularly well to begin with. And now? The news that she moved on doesn't even register as relevant data. That's what closure actually looks like, by the way. Not some big dramatic scene where you say everything you should have said and they apologize in exactly the right way. Real closure is when someone's existence stops being a variable in your emotional equation. when the news cycle of their life no longer has breaking news alerts in your brain. He ran into her once at a mutual friend's birthday party. She tried to approach him at the bar. He politely excused himself to grab another drink and spent the rest of the night across the venue. She didn't try again. She left early. No scene, no conversation, no "oh, so we're really not going to talk" drama. Just two people who used to be something to each other, sharing a space briefly and moving on. Meanwhile, Marcus got promoted. Senior consultant, significant raise. The project he buried himself in during those 3 weeks of silence, the financial firm overhaul that kept him at his desk until 8 p.m. every night, turned into one of the company's biggest success stories. His focus during that period was, by his own account, sharper than it had ever been. Funny how that works. When you're not spending mental energy managing someone's emotional volatility or waiting for their approval, that energy has to go somewhere, and apparently it went somewhere pretty useful. He went on a few dates, nothing serious. He wasn't rushing it. Something had shifted in how he approached the whole thing. He wasn't just looking for whoever wanted him back, he was actually figuring out what he wanted, what kind of person he wanted to be around, what his boundaries were, and how to state them without apologizing for having them. His phone, formerly an anxiety device disguised as a communication tool, had become just a phone again. He checked it when he felt like it. He responded when he had something to say. He stopped performing available for people who weren't showing up for him. His apartment felt like his again. His time felt like his. His mornings were quiet and unhurried. He slept better. And then, about 8 weeks after the doorstep goodbye, his phone buzzed with a long text. From Danielle. An apology. An explanation. A request to talk when he was ready. Marcus read it once, then archived it, without responding.
Some apologies come too late. Some conversations don't need to happen. Marcus archived that text and never opened it again. Not because he was cruel, not because he wanted her to suffer, just because there was genuinely nothing left to say. The relationship had run its course. The door was closed. Not slammed, just closed, and leaving it that way was its own kind of answer. Let's talk about what this whole thing actually means, because I've seen people frame stories like this as some kind of power move guide. How to make her regret losing you, the silence trick that always works. And look, I get it, those titles get clicks, whatever. But that framing completely misses the actual point, and the actual point is way more useful to you. Here's the real lesson. Needy is one of the most weaponized words in modern relationships. It's used to shame people for having basic human needs: consistency, communication, reassurance that the person who says they love you actually wants to hear from you. Those aren't high-maintenance demands. Those are minimum viable relationship requirements. They're table stakes. And anyone who makes you feel pathetic for wanting them is doing you a quiet disservice. Marcus wasn't needy. He was one text in after a day and a half of silence from a girlfriend who was clearly online and choosing not to respond. That's not needy. That's a normal person checking in on someone they love. The fact that it was received as an imposition tells you everything about the dynamic and nothing negative about him. The other thing this story gets right, his response wasn't calculated cruelty. He didn't go silent to teach her a lesson or watch her squirm. He went silent because continuing to reach for someone who told him his reaching was a problem felt impossible. He was protecting himself. That's different. The silence was a side effect of self-preservation, not a strategy. And the growth that happened in that silence, that was real. The gym, the reconnection with Tyler, the books he stayed up until 2 a.m. reading, the promotion, the dinners he cooked just because he wanted to. That wasn't performance. That was a guy remembering what his life felt like before it became organized around someone else's availability. The final thing I want to leave you with is this. There will always be a version of someone who only shows up when they're scared of losing you. When the silence gets loud enough, when the absence is undeniable, they'll knock on your door in sweatpants with red eyes and promises. And that moment will feel significant, because it is significant. They're telling you, finally, that you mattered. But mattering to someone when they're panicking about losing you is not the same as being a priority when everything's comfortable. Don't confuse the two. Marcus said it best himself. I don't hate her. I don't wish her ill. I just wish I'd respected myself enough to walk away sooner. Better late than never. Know your worth. Set your boundaries without apologizing for having them. And if someone tells you that checking in on the person you love makes you needy, let them sit with the silence they asked for. Some people only realize what they had when they can't have it anymore. Don't be the one who learned that lesson too late. That's all for today. If this hit different, you know what to do. Subscribe, drop a comment, and hey, take care of yourself out there.